Guns first arrived in Japan in about 1543, on a boat manned by Asian pirates and a couple Portuguese sailors. Now, there's only 2 arquebuses on the boat, and after a shooting demonstration, I believe they shot ducks. The Lord, let me get this right, Lord Tokitaka, probably pronouncing that incorrectly, decided to buy both guns for about 1,000 taels each. Now, to give a rough estimation of how much that is on price, in a couple decades time the same guns could be bought for 2 taels. So, you can tell, that was a hell of a lot of money. And in their period of civil war, Japan fell in love with guns afterwards. Which brings me to where I am now. I am in Nagashino Castle. Well, the remnants of the castle, and also the site of one of the most important battles in Japanese history, the Battle of Nagashino in 1575. On this day, Lord Oda, who attacked over there on those mountains, he attacked with about 38,000 men. 10,000 of them were carrying guns, and this came just a few decades after guns first arrived in Japan. What's more is that hiding behind wooden walls, they actually fired by rank. So that's a tactic that was quite ahead of its time and wouldn't go out of date until World War I essentially. And if you want to compare that to European battles at the time, 20 years later in the Scottish Highlands, the Battle of Glenlivet had about 10,000 Scottish clansmen flee the scene after being fired upon by a couple cannons. I think they were defeated by a force of no more than 2,000 men. So to show you that this was a bloody big battle, even compared to European standards. The Japanese love of guns continued to develop for a couple of decades, so much so that when they invaded Korea around 1600, they declared that all men, including samurai, should carry guns. And they were producing these guns by themselves, so much so that some people estimate that they were at least making as many guns as European nations, and some say even more. So, what happened? Because when Japan opened up again in the 19th century, European and American commentators commented that their army knew nothing about firearms. So, why did Japan go from being in love with firearms to not knowing anything about them? Like with everything, there's a couple of competing theories. One theory says that it was peace that made them become sort of complacent. Their country had been united, they failed to take Korea, so they didn't look to expand anymore, and the Japanese were still feared warriors, so nobody sought to invade, not even the Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese. Everybody commented that the Japanese were fierce warriors, so they had no threat of invasion and no more civil war. So they were at peace, and they became a bit complacent. Another theory says it was the samurai. And now the samurai did use guns a lot during the civil wars, but they were worried that they were losing old traditions. For instance, they used to send forward champions into the battlefield who proclaimed their old victories, and they had a very strong connection with their sword. So they didn't want to lose the sword over the gun, if that makes sense. Plus, if your status and rank relies on your reputation as a fighter, guns equalized it. So they also ran the risk of losing their rank and social status because of it. Many Europeans were also fearful of firearms. For instance, Martin Luther called them cruel and damnable and associated them with the devil. And many generals thought that they undermined old swordsmanship. But the big difference was lords and warriors within European society never really got more than 1% of the population. Whereas in Japan, the samurai were about 10% of the population. So their demands were listened to, essentially. And guns were just stripped away from the battlefield altogether. But in a newly unified Japan, Hideyoshi, the new leader, wanted to get rid of all the weapons from his old enemies. Now these sword hunts only got rid of swords. He didn't consider the gun to be a weapon at that point. So guns survived in Japan, but they were largely in the hands of the peasants. And some samurai used them for hunting as well. And they weren't seen as weapons of war until the 19th century, when they were used to crush some uprisings, and this was after the Europeans and the Americans arrived. So after the Americans and Europeans arrived, and after the Bushin Rebellion was crushed largely by peasant hunters, Japan realized that guns were good for the army, so started producing them once again, but they also realized that they're dangerous in the hands of civilians, so they largely outlawed guns from the population in the late 19th century.